As we do each B'yachad Shabbat, each family Shabbat, instead of a sermon, I want to share a story with you tonight. This story takes place a long, long time ago in a kingdom called Israel. And in Israel, many hundreds or maybe thousands of years ago, there lived a king who prayed year after year after year for a child. And finally, one day, God answered the king's prayer, and the king, along with his wife, the queen, had a baby boy, a prince. And the king wanted to give this boy, this prince, the most incredible, the most beautiful room to grow up in. And so the king called all of his closest advisors, the directors of the National Museum of Art, as if maybe that existed, I'm not sure, to gather all of the best artists, actually exactly 4 of the best artists in the land of Israel. And so after a few weeks, his advisors came back and said, we have them, the 4 greatest artists in the land of Israel. And the king said, nice to meet you, thank you for coming. I have a task. I would like for each of you to take one wall and to paint the most beautiful mural you can, so that my son, the prince, has something beautiful to look at each day. The artist that creates the most beautiful mural will receive a great and very generous prize. So each of the artists went to work. They knew they only had a month, and they worked day in, day out, painting, running around like mad people, trying to get the job done. All except for one artist, who just mainly sat by his wall, reading, taking a nap. All the other artists barely even took time to eat or to rest, but he just sat there eating falafel and checking TikTok or Snapchat. Just kidding. So the first artist decided to paint faces of people from all across the kingdom, from all across Israel. The artist knew that the king loved his subjects so much and wanted the king and the prince to be able to look at their faces each day. The second artist painted a giant landscape with pictures of all of the most beautiful places in the land of Israel, from the hills of Judea and Jerusalem to the Mediterranean Sea, the waves and the beaches, to up north in the Galilee, the beautiful lake, the beautiful sea with the Golan Heights in the distance, the fog resting over the water. The third artist decided to paint a mural of the king so that the prince would always know he is loved, that his dad is always with him. Now the fourth artist, his wall was blank until that very last day, the last day of the month, when suddenly that last artist started rushing around frantically. He brought in these giant boxes. He was hammering and nailing and tinkering all day long. Finally, at dusk, the king's advisors and guards shut the doors of the prince's bedroom, and night fell. Early the next morning, at dawn the next morning, the king and his advisors went in to inspect the room and to judge the winner. The king looked at the first wall. Immediately, his heart swelled. He saw the faces of so many people in the kingdom that he loved and cared about. He was filled with joy and happiness and couldn't believe the beauty. He snapped his fingers, said, "Get this man a pot of gold." He went to the next wall, immediately viewed the beautiful landscapes of Israel, all of his favorite places, and tears filled his eyes. He was so excited that his son would inherit such a beautiful kingdom. He snapped his fingers and said, "Get this lady, this beautiful artist, a pot of gold." And he went over to the third wall, and he couldn't believe it. He saw the portrait of himself, and the king, he was not a vain man, but the artist captured something the king had never even seen in himself, something deep in his soul, his compassion, his love, his sensitivity. The king was so deeply moved, he snapped his fingers. He said, "Get this artist a pot of gold." And the king made his way over to the last wall, and it took his breath away. In one view, the king could see his subjects, could see the beautiful landscape of Israel, could see that portrait of himself all in one view. You see, the artist had installed a series of mirrors so that even though you were just looking at this one wall, you could see the beautiful walls surrounding it. The king exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, this is the most beautiful wall of all." He went up to the artist and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And then the king turned around and walked out of the room, or he was almost out of the room, when that last artist yelled, "Wait, wait, wait! You said that the most beautiful wall would garner a grand prize. And this artist and that artist and that artist, they all got prizes, but where is my prize?" And the king said, "I think you misunderstand. Come here." And the king took him right to the center of that fourth wall, of that artist's wall, and he said, "Don't you see? There are 3 pots of gold." The king turned around and walked out. What do you think is the moral of this story? Anybody have any ideas? What is the moral of this story? You can be a kid. You can be a big kid. Yes, Barbara, what do you think?
What you do may not ever be rewarded. Enjoyed nevertheless.
Lovely interpretation. What you do might never be rewarded, but it will be enjoyed nevertheless. Beautiful. Okay, Allison, what do you think?
It's all in your perspective.
It's all in, say more about that. What do you mean?
I don't know how to say more about that.
Okay, well, it all
depends on if you look at this mirror or that wall or up there or down there or in your heart. It's all in your perspective.
It's all in your perspective. Any other thoughts? Yes. Hold on to your own vision. Hold on to your own vision. Did the last artist have a vision? Shaking your head, no. Let's take another couple interpretations.
So what I thought was that your hard work was the most rewarding of all. Like what she said earlier is that like you may not be rewarded, but people enjoy it nonetheless. And I think that's the most rewarding of all is that you made someone happy.
I love that. Okay. So even if you're not rewarded, you might make someone happy, and that is the greatest reward of all. We'll take 2 more interpretations in the back. Ben? Don't plagiarize. Spoken like the teacher that you are. Very nice interpretation. We got time for one more in the back. In the very back, yes.
You don't always get what you want.
Oh, you don't always get what you want. Thank you so much. This is the most Jewish exercise that we've done all Shabbat. That is what Judaism is all about, is taking these stories, the ancient stories in the Torah, modern stories, and wrestling with their meaning. I had an idea about what the moral was, but the ones that you shared were all so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your Torah with all of us.